Welcome to Friday's Foresight TV. I am here with my good friend Michael Owens. We are going to be talking about the state of the industry and senior living. Well, I don't know. There's so many things.
You didn't tell me we were talking about Steve. I thought I was just coming on here to promote my event and I can get the hell out of here.
Yeah, no, we're going to do better than that. So we're going to talk about state of the industry, your event, why Bahamas, and all that good stuff. But before we get started, first, this.
Hey guys, Steve Moran here.
How much did you pay for that cartoon?
Not, I don't even know how to answer that question. I'm going to give you $10,000. Is that too much or too low?
Wow, yeah, no, it's really good.
Yeah. I know it wasn't that much. And we've actually got two that we're using and a couple more that are being built for new channels that we're doing. So it looks like you're already in the Bahamas, are you?
I am. I mean, you're interrupting me, man. I was just about to get a margarita and you said, hey, come on Foresight TV. I guess your other guest had canceled and I only given you about 10 minutes, man.
Yeah. So let's actually talk. A lot of people know who you are and what Senior Living Innovation Forum is and all that. And I brag about it being my favorite conference of the year, now favorite two conferences of the year. But just for people who maybe just stumbled across, let's talk a little bit about who you are, why you're doing this, and what the event is.
Sure. So Senior Living Innovation Forum, we launched it in 2015. Our organization, Influence Group, produces invite-only retreats focused on leadership in a number of different industries. And we're in healthcare, retail, hospitality. So when we launched in 2015, a lot of people that came to our healthcare event and our hospitality were in senior housing and thought that our format would work well. So we launched, and you were there at our first event at the Margaritaville Resort in Florida. It was a small gathering, but it's basically the main idea is it's an intimate retreat. We like to call it retreat versus a conference that's limited to executive leadership, C-suite, to focus on the future of the industry. A lot of events and a lot of media is focused on the challenges of today, which there are a lot, but we think that it's great to bring together a group, regardless of industry, in a destination that's away from the beaten path to think about where the industry is going. And oftentimes leaders don't have the ability to do that because, like I said earlier, they're bogged down with just all of, the challenges of the day. And obviously of the last few years with COVID and everything else, there have been a lot of day-to-day challenges where they haven't been able to focus on the future. Yeah. So it was a once-a-year event until this year. There's enough, I guess, demand and interest, and people, of course, can't manage their schedules to always make the date. So we're doing it twice a year. But size-wise, we always keep it around a 250 people. So it's intimate. And it's really about making connections and obviously being inspired to think a little bit differently about the future.
Cool. So can you talk a little bit about content for this coming event?
Yeah. So we have, I mentioned Margaritaville. We actually have the president of Margaritaville coming to talk about Latitude Margaritaville, which I know you just actually published some content. I think you went to visit one of their locations.
Yeah.
We have their president coming to talk about lessons learned over the last 5 years. It's now 5 years since they launched, and they're expanding outside of Florida into Texas. So we're going to be talking with Bill Bullock, the president, about that. We also have Chris Barton. If you're familiar with the app Shazam, it's the app that you can hold up and it'll tell you it's music and it can tell you any song that's playing. He's the founder of that. So he's going to come give a talk about innovation, really, and talking about how they launched that. When they actually launched that before there were smartphones, which a lot of people don't know. And most people thought it was a crazy idea. And now there's over 1 billion downloads. So we like to bring speakers from outside the industry, of course. And we also have a lot of people from within inside the industry. Bob Kramer will be joining us. He's been with us, as you know, a number of times, and people always love to hear Bob's thoughts and opinions on where the industry is going. Tom Grape, Chris Gay, and a lot more of folks that will be announced shortly. But for this special edition, one that we're doing in the Bahamas, of course, we realize we can't take people to a destination like that and trap them in a windowless ballroom for a few days. It would kind of be ridiculous to do that. So we will be doing that in the morning, but in the afternoon, we're going to break things up and, of course, take advantage of the destination and do some discussions outside, and obviously take advantage of getting out in the water and strengthening a lot of the relationships that have come out of SLIF over the years. And I think that's the main thing that I think I'd actually like to talk to you about, even just to kind of hear from your experience, because you go to a lot of conferences. I think you go to them all. And that's the most important thing I think that comes out of these. Yes, you get some good content, but it's really about making those strong connections. And I believe it's easier to make those connections when you're at a nice destination versus a large convention center.
Yeah, for me, so I'm glad you asked that. I think that for me, what I really like about it is that it's a nice mix of fun and business. And so when I go off to Nick next week, I will be at high velocity, right? I'll be going sort of from one conversation to another, and it's probably sort of a personal weakness, right? But I'll try to talk to as many people as I possibly can, knowing that with 3,000 people attending there, that two things will happen. There'll be people that I really want to talk to that I don't even see, and there'll be others that I want to have long conversations with, and it'll only be, hi, how you doing? But when you've got 2.5 days and a couple hundred people there, there's still going to be some of that, frankly, but it's a lot easier to you don't feel the pressure to move on. You can have casual conversations. You can be having conversation and fun at the same time. So the intensity comes down. You actually get to know people better. And it's just it's like, to me, the ideal. You sort of almost wish you could do a week of that.
Well, our tagline for our business is we're the opposite of a trade show. And most times when we tell that to people, it resonates with them, because most people go, like, trade show? It's not, it's a necessary evil for a lot of people in sales and marketing that they have to go out to trade shows. And oftentimes the people that attend trade shows are not C-level, right? They may send people below to go. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But for us, with the audience they were curating, it is kind of the carefully curated group that we bring together that, they find that the value in being able to have those conversations and being able to easily connect with someone versus trying to see someone in a sea of 3,000 or 10,000 people, depending on the show that they're going to.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing that I hear from C-suite leaders in particular is that they really like the idea that they can just sit in a very casual setting and have conversations with their peers. And frankly, one of the challenges they run into in sort of standard trade show kinds of things is you've got some really great salespeople who are out working as vendors, and you've got some people who are just have got to get a deal, a deal. And they don't, it's hard to say this, but sometimes they don't behave appropriately for somebody who's in a C-suite position, and they make their positions worse. And so even when you're looking at the vendor community at a conference like you've got really high level people who are going to add to the conversation.
We don't let those type of salespeople into our shows. So we screen the vendors as well to make sure.
Yeah.
Have to. No, but to be honest, we do. For the most part, the sponsors that do come, they're sending their CEOs. And give an example. I mean, he's no longer CEO, but Jack York, perfect example. Last time I was on this show, it was me and Jack, actually. But people like that who do come. I know CARE is sponsoring. I think sponsoring Foresight TV. I saw a thing before. Charles Turner will be someone there that would actually be participating in the meeting. So it brings a different level too. And I think that the C-suite leaders that do come, they appreciate having access to, key leaders from these companies versus a regional sales rep that they may see at a regional show.
That's right. So I want to actually sort of, you like I talk to a lot of leaders, a lot of people in the industry, every week and every year. When you do that, as you sort of talk to people, and what are you hearing about what people are seeing is both, let's start with the opportunities for next year and maybe even the next couple of years.
Well, I start off by saying that we're going to be talking a lot about the future, but when I do talk to leaders right now, the obvious thing that they all want to talk about, of course, is staffing. And that is still the thing. And we will be addressing it and looking through how outside industries are dealing with it. The interesting thing for us at Influence Group is we produce gatherings and content now in 12 different industries. So next week, we have our retail spaces event. We're bringing all the major retailers together. Guess what their big problem is? Staffing. The week after that is our restaurant spaces event. Biggest challenge for them in the restaurants is staffing, front of house and back of house. So we have robotics companies and everything else. So this is not going away, and it's something that I think there will be innovation in that sense, that people are going to have to figure out whether they're using automation and new ways to incentivize and engage people that traditionally did not work in senior living. So those are the things that we're going to be talking about, and I think that's where the interesting content and things will happen over the next few years. There is still the debate about senior housing versus senior care. I guess the hospitality product versus the healthcare product, believe it or not. But I think that the conversation and the debates are getting stronger. And interesting enough, the topic that a few years ago, we put on the program about healthcare integration. Yes, it was interesting and people want to discuss it. There's a lot more true interest this time, like really trying to figure out. And of course, people like Lynn Katzman that were, I guess pioneers in that realm, for a number of years now, I guess I'm sure she's probably getting a lot more calls from people saying like, no, I really want to understand what you were talking about. And it's interesting to kind of see that too.
Well, so this is a really interesting topic to me. I mean, I think there are two really significant things that I'm thinking more and more about. The first is that perhaps much of senior living, we're trying to be something that we're not really capable of being, meaning that people really do come to us when they've got physical or cognitive challenges for the most part. I mean, you look at CCRCs and some areas, but mostly people don't go to senior living until they feel like they've got a fairly significant need. And we talk a lot around wanting to be a lifestyle choice rather than a necessity. And I'm still not sure that's actually a healthy, a fruitful path to travel.
I'll agree with you 100%. I mean, I have parents with health issues in their 80s right now, and the idea of them if I even had a conversation with them about going into senior housing, they would lose their mind. My mom would lose my number. There could come a time where they're going to need some care. Obviously, we all will at some point. But on the flip side, we have Margaritaville coming to talk and Disney now with Story Living doing that. Those are lifestyle products. But again, it's still catering not to seniors, really, at the end of the day. What is a senior really these days? When you're saying plus, so you're saying like even active adult. I mean, I guess that's, we have to classify different segments of the industry, but it's not senior.
So, well, that's the other thing that I think is really interesting is Latitude's Margaritaville, is that senior living? I don't know. That's one of the questions I'd love to hear from Margaritaville, because I would actually say they are senior living. They're just a different category of seniors.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, our president is, how old is he?
80 something.
Yeah. It's the whole idea. The average age of someone living in Margaritaville, I believe, is in their 60s.
63.
So, 63. All right. So it's not senior living, but it's, it's active adult. I guess we want to classify it as that. So what I find interesting, and that's why we invited the president to come speak at SLIF, is to obviously they have the Jimmy Buffett brand behind them. They've got the Margaritaville money. And there's a lot of devoted parrot heads, right? That want to live that lifestyle. I wouldn't want to live that lifestyle, but they've found their niche. But what I've asked him, and it's Minto Communities that partner with them, is what have they learned that could be applicable if they decided to do other projects that didn't have the Margaritaville brand? And the interesting thing, what they said, it's all about the experience. At the end of the day, they're home builders, but they've really become experience or storytellers, the same way that that Disney now is doing that. And that's where they're putting a lot of their energy into. They know how to build a box. They know how to build a home, but it's the programming and everything else that goes into it is what people are really attaching themselves to. So I think there's a lot of lessons there that senior housing leaders can learn from. Because
I really want to dig back into this this idea of the experience a little bit more. But first, I want you to watch this video from one of our sponsors.
I'm not familiar with that. That's actually a pretty cool product.
Yeah, they're doing some really cool stuff. It's really a way to, protect more independent residents who still have stoves and kitchens. So automatic shut off and kind of keep track of activity and that kind of thing. So it's really, really cool stuff. Really excited about what they're doing. And by the way, Leanne, who's producing the background, tells us that Joe Biden's 79 years old.
79. But I get the point I'm making there. He's leading our country right now. It's 79 years old, and and not getting into politics, he's in good form. So 79 years old, he's young in my view. And so that's why I just find it interesting when we're talking about senior housing, senior living, and we're talking people living in Margaritaville in their 60s, which is completely independent. Now, what I'm curious to see is when those people age, will they start offering, services, for people that are there, or will they say it's time to move into somewhere new?
Yeah, I think that, when I was there, I visited with their national sales manager, and he said he doesn't really know. I think there are lots of areas that as successful as they are, and this is true with all successful companies, I know this is true with you, that you have great success. You don't rest on your laurels. You keep saying, what else do we do to make it better? So I want to talk about this experience thing. You had in Napa, probably my favorite presentation was the Meow Wolf guy.
Okay, yeah.
And they create these immersive art experiences that that's all about the experience. In fact, it was so impressive to me that not this coming week, but the following week, I'm taking my entire team to Las Vegas. And the primary reason I picked Las Vegas is after hearing his talk, I wanted to be able to take the entire team to go experience Meow Wolf. I'm coming off a sinus infection. I thought I was going to make it.
I hope I can't
without coughing.
Through the screen.
You
here.
Can't catch anything through the internet, so you're lucky about that.
Yeah.
And so in a couple of weeks, the whole team is gonna go do that experience. And so I think that that's low hanging fruit. And I think even in the context of saying assisted living is need driven, if I'm going to do something that's need driven, wouldn't I rather go someplace that's going to give me a great experience, a Meow Wolf experience, rather than a Chuck E. Cheese experience?
Yeah, I agree with you. I actually went to Meow Wolf last weekend in Denver, and it was my first experience. Even though I've had Vince, the founder, who's awesome, speak at multiple events. He's actually speaking again at our retail spaces event in a couple of weeks.
Cool.
Even be more applicable because they're now expanding into Simon property malls. It's bonkers. It really is. And it's really hard to describe without going in yourself. But for the people, I guess, that are watching, it's a psychedelic art experience center, and it's massive. And, they fee to get inside as between $50 and $60 a person. There's 3 locations now, Vegas, Denver, and Santa Fe, where it started. And it's just a place where you just walk in and you explore on your own. And when I was in Denver, right before I went, I was in a shop and I was explaining to the girl in the shop that I was going to Meow Wolf. And I'm like, have you been? She goes, oh my God, like 6 times. And I'm like, 6 times. I'm like, normally you go to a place, you see it once and you go back, and it's, it's really clicked with the community in Denver. Obviously in Vegas, I think it's one of the largest attractions, but what it is, it's not cookie cutter. And I think that's something that Vince showed in his presentation at SLIF is nowadays, pretty much everything looks the same. Most senior living communities look the same. Most senior living websites look the same. And even Starbucks now are starting to look the same, especially the freestanding ones that you see everywhere. And he showed an image of that. And it's like, you couldn't be standing out in front of that and tell me where you are, because everything is cookie cutter and looks the same. Now, is that necessarily fair to say? No, but it's inspiring people to think a little bit differently, is that if you just look a little bit differently and act and cater to certain things, you'll stand out. That's the first step. But then being authentic is a whole other thing too. I mean, just so if you want, you can see on the Senior Living Innovation Forum website, I believe we have video of the talk up on there, sliforum.com on the screen. If we don't have the full video, which I'm not sure if we were able to publish that, there's definitely a summary write-up with some of the key things.
Yeah, and I think I've written about it as well. So we have an article up, and we'll talk about it. And of course, after we go visit it, we'll do some filming there, and I'm sure we'll have some content that we write about it. And
well, I mean, you're also going to have to take some acid before you go there, Steve. I mean, it's a prerequisite. I don't know.
Is that right? Yeah, Leanne, you'll be in charge of who's producing in the back. You'll be in charge of taking care of that. I was sort of thinking that. I was driving on the freeway last week and I saw a car heading on Interstate 80 west towards the Bay Area, covered with all this dust, and it reminded me that Burning Man was just last week. And so in some sense, I guess I equate Meow Wolf as being kind of a Burning Man-like experience.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, and I'm sure if you were talking to Vince, he would definitely say that a lot of that, I'm sure he's a burner. I guess I can't speak for him, but did you see, I know you went obviously a few years back to, did you go with your dad? Is that who you went with? Or?
Yeah, my dad went. And Lynn Katzman is the one that really spearheaded this thing. And we actually continue to talk about going back and going again. We certainly learned some lessons about doing it differently. Because the one thing that you get at that you don't get at Meow Wolf that you do get at Burning Man is lots of dirt and dust.
Yeah. Well, Short, if you haven't seen it, and I've never been to Burning Man, I'd love to go. But the drone show that they just did last week, the drone light show, if you haven't seen it on YouTube,
I haven't seen that yet.
Unbelievable. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Yeah. So, one of the other areas that I'm starting to hear, in fact, actually, sort of two areas maybe we want to touch on is that you sort of hate to talk about it, but what do you see as sort of the big threats to senior living right now?
The home, which is a good plug. We're launching the Home Care Innovation Forum next June in San Diego. Well done. There you go. It is the home. I mean, it's and stale product. And, I find it, how do I say this without, I have to be careful how I say this, because again, I don't fully understand some of it, to be honest, sometimes, but there's a lot of money in senior housing, even when it seems senior housing is struggling. I saw McKnight's, I forget his name, the guy that writes for McKnight's, the main guy, published a thing this week about, leading into NIC, that there's a lot of uncertainty, and it'll be interesting to see the NIC numbers, obviously. It just seems that there's a lot of operators and providers out there still that are still using the same model and just think that the demand's going to come. And I think, if you had Bob Kramer on here, he argues about that a lot. It just seems that there's some people going to be in for a rude awakening, but I don't know, what the major threat is. People like to say Amazon and Apple and Walmart and CVS and all that. Yeah, I guess to a certain extent, but then I guess a lot of that goes back to the home, right? So it's the home is the biggest threat, because the younger generations, I'm a Gen Xer, and our generation, no way, we're not going there. We're not going into senior housing unless the product completely changes.
So I'm not sure. I'm going to push back on that a little bit. I kind of find myself thinking that when you get to be 85 that your needs, or 90, or maybe his health gets better, maybe it's 95, that as you start to lose physical and perhaps mental capability, that will change. But and I'm in the same way. I mean, I'm unlike you. I'm actually old enough that I could move into a senior living community, and I can't imagine it, with maybe a couple of exceptions. And part of the problem is the stigma. This is one of the things that Jack Cumming talks a lot about. Is I think it was the biggest surprise, and I've heard this from other people who've moved in and still working, is that the stigma happens even from the operators of the communities as well as from the outside. And how do we fix that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's above my pay grade.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is the debate, of course, that happens to SLIF all the time. I mean,
it does.
It's a needs-based product, because you just said, yeah, when you're in your 85, 90 years old, yeah, of course, then I'm going to go if I have a need to go, if I need someone to care for me, if I'm a widow, or, if my children, don't want to take care for me, or who knows? I mean, I'm in my mid 40s now. So we're talking 40 plus years from now that I may, looking potentially moving into something like that. The world's going to look completely different. Like, we wouldn't be doing something like this. We'll have holograms, and we'll have flying cars hopefully by then. So who knows? It's really tough to kind of look that far out. But if you want to look the next 10, 15 years, I think that it's a little bit easier to think that there's the demands of obviously coming, but I think that the people are going to, the customer is going to be a lot more selective.
Well, and I think there are more and more options, and it becomes easier. There are lots of the options that make it easier to stay home. And so I'm just not sure this big wave is going to be there that a lot of operators are expecting and hoping for. I think it'll be a bubble, but I think there are going to be people who are going to struggle. And let's face it, today there are people who are doing a great job, who have full buildings, they have waiting lists. Yeah. And that's because at the end of the day, they do a great job of the baseline of care. Plus, they create a great experience for residents and for team members.
Yeah, but can they sustain that moving forward, especially if there is the silver tsunami coming, which I guess, I think we're all tired of hearing that phrase, or all the different other ones.
So I want to actually shift for a few minutes back to this active living. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Nick just yesterday came out with a report sort of better defining what this active 55 marketplace is going to look like. I've downloaded it. I haven't had a chance to look at it. I'm sure we'll hear a lot about it at next week. And so do you think that that's going to become the new thing, and that assisted living and memory care and even independent living will just become sort of fade to black?
Well, it's a different product. It's a completely different product. That's it. I mean, and also 55, I just think the numbers, I think that I almost wish Nick and everything would just say look, can we just stop saying 55 and take a number off of it? Number one, I guess you have to maybe somehow, but 55 just seems kind of ridiculous. It's two different products. And I think that's where I think it's not even a debate at this point, I think. That's my take on it.
Yeah, and I guess that's part of the thing that I still sort of struggle with, is I know that it's sort of the new hot product. I mean, it's got the advantage of higher rents than traditional apartments.
Yeah.
It's got much less staffing. But, to be successful at anything, it's hard work, right? And I'm fearful that people are looking at it, in some sense, they're looking at it like they did memory care, say 8 or 9 years ago. It was when you were just sort of coming into this space, right? But all you had to do was, you couldn't build too many memory care, and you're just going to make buckets and buckets of money.
Yeah, but memory care requires a lot of care, right? So active adult, I understand, and it does make sense. The numbers do make sense. It's very, if you get it right, it is I guess an easier operation. I'm sure people listening will be like, oh, it's not that easy, but compared to memory care,
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not knocking the product or the segment or whatever you want to, the classification. I just think that when you say 55 and thinking that it's senior living, it's not senior living. And
I guess that's sort of the struggle I see as the industry sort of embraces that is I'm with you. I just don't know that it has very much to do with assisted living and memory care and nursing homes, and maybe not very much to do with independent living, sort of traditional independent living.
But it is the hot thing. I saw the Nick agenda. That's like the main stage keynote panel, I think, is on active adult. Don't worry, we'll be talking about active adult in the Bahamas. But I mean, Margaritaville is active adult. So I mean,
absolutely. And the
other
thing,
we're looking through the lens of what can senior living learn from active adult, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where the conversation should be.
Well, and I mean, the other thing I would just say when I look at Margaritaville, I visited for an afternoon. I really liked it a lot. I think I'd probably like living there for about a year, but I think I end up getting tired of it. And yet I could make you and I could make a list of friends that we know together that would love to live there and do very well there as long as they can. So it's not judgmental. It's just, we all have different tastes and ideas. And yet what I wonder about is, does it 10 years or 20 years down the road become, as you talked about earlier, just another Starbucks, which is just sort of a coffee place down on the corner?
Yeah, so it's just another Brookdale.
That's right. That's exactly right. So we're about out of time. I want to do one quick thing. Let's just talk a little bit. If somebody says, "Oh man, these are two cool guys. I want to go hang out with them in the Bahamas." What do they have to do?
So I guess bring up something that we get sometimes criticism about is that, unfortunately, unfortunately not the word, is that we limit the audience to C-suites, CEOs, presidents, COOs. We do get people asking if they can come that are in different capacities. The event, we cap the size to 200 people, and the content is geared towards people that are in those seats, in CEOs. So that's it. So if you are in that role and you're interested in coming to this event or even our spring event, which is going to be in Austin, Texas, where I'm at right now, believe it or not, even though the background, is just go on our website, sliforum.com. You can request an invitation to join. One thing I didn't hit on, again, is the format of the event. It is, the only reason why we're able to do this is the support of all of our wonderful sponsors. And there is no cost to attend, and we actually provide the accommodations and everything else. We do the one-on-one meeting format. So those companies that do come, with their latest technologies and services, we do these 20-minute pre-arranged meetings. So you have the ability to kind of really do some one-stop shopping and learn about the latest solutions in the industry. So in addition to the great content and the friendships and the fun experience, there is the strategic sourcing, as we like to call it. And I'll end on just, I like to say is, 7 years ago, we launched this event, and friendships is really the most important thing that I think have come out of this, and collaborations. I mentioned Jack York before. Jack York met Melissa Banco, and then they started doing raising money for Cameroon, and now they're doing Tailgate together. And I only mention that because they made a cool little video mentioning that they met at SLIF. And I can't name them, but there's a lot of operators that have met great vendors that have really helped their business at SLIF. And obviously friendships like you and I, Steve. I mean, that's how we met each other. I invited you to come to SLIF, and you came the first year. And outside of, coming on your show, you and I communicate on a pretty regular basis. So
that's right.
And I think that's what's really unique about the senior living industry compared to some of the other verticals that we're in, is that there is that camaraderie, and there's really strong bonds and people that do want to come together to obviously better the business, but also to learn from each other.
Yep. Yeah. And I know that a fair number of our partners at Senior Living Foresight are also your sponsors who will be there. And, to sort of give you the power of these kinds of things. I don't have permission to say who it was, but when I was in Napa, I got to talking to one of the operators who's big fan. And one of the things that she said to me was, Oh yeah, we mostly, when I look at what the vendors we're using, we're mostly using people we found and discovered through Senior Living Foresight. And so, as you're looking for vendors to help, we're looking for vendors to help. It is relationship selling at its very finest. So,
So we didn't get into King Charles, the Trump FBI raid, Christian nationalism. We had all these things on the agenda.
Oh man, it's probably just as well we didn't. We can go. You know what? I'll tell you what. Afterwards, we'll get on and we'll tweet about it. How about that?
All right.
So,
cool, man.
Michael, thank you very much. Actually, look forward to seeing you at the next conference.
I'll see you in DC. I'll probably see you in DC next week. Yeah.
For those of you who are going to be there, look forward to seeing you there. And of course, those who are going to the Bahamas, I can hardly wait to have, maybe we'll go scuba diving and lift a glass and have some great conversations. So
awesome. Well, look forward to seeing you, man.
Thank you very much.
I'll be here waiting until November. So
good. Yeah, I appreciate that you're holding down the fort.
Yeah. All right. Take care.